Okay, this is going to be your sighting demo today. So I've got a super simple still life here, and you will learn how to do perspective using a ruler, a vanishing point, and a horizon line so that you can make things perfect. But oftentimes we have something far more complicated. And in a still life like this, it may be simple, but we would have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, like 10 different vanishing points, and that would be extremely difficult to try to measure on your own. So a lot of times with drawing, you just have to get what feels good with the objects in the right directions and in the right angles. So this is the way you do it. It's what's called sighting. Now there's different ways to do sighting. You can use your pencil to measure the angles or measure the widths of things. You want to make sure you're not adjusting your arm closer and further, always at the same spot, outstretched arm, that's as far as my arm will go. And I never want to move that position, because if you move your arm too far, if you're leaning way far over or if you're leaning far back, it changes things. So you have to be at the same distance every time. So you can do this two different things. You can measure the width of an object like this. So that object is that wide. And if I measure that to the box in front of it, the box is a little over twice the width of the cylinder. So I can measure that when I'm up on the drawing. But the other thing this is really helpful for is finding the perspective angles. Now there'll be estimates and it'll be rough and you'll have to make some adjustments, but it helps you get things in really fast, really easy. So let's take an object, for example. So let's use this white object as our example. So what I'll do is I'll find the angle of the box as it recedes in space by using my pencil and coming right up to the edge of the object. As soon as I have that angle, I hold the pencil and I make sure it doesn't move, and I come back to the drawing and I put it down. And that's the angle. So now I can come down and say there's the angle of that side of the box. So now let's go back to the box. I go back to the box and I say, okay, what's the top angle? The top angle is like this. So again, I come back to the drawing and I know that the top angle is something like this. So now I can put in the top angle. You can kind of draw these lines to infinity and they don't have to be perfect. I'm not using a ruler. We'll decide how big the box is in a second, right? Then we can come back to the box. Now let's get the other side. Again, I'll go here for the angle of the bottom. Bring my pencil back up, use one of these lines, say there's the bottom of my box. So that's the angle there, and it's gonna go here. So now I know how long this is. If that's the edge of my box, there it is. Now vertical lines are always vertical, so you can draw these to infinity too until you decide how big your box is. Right, we don't have a back yet. Let's come back up here and let's look at our object. Now this object's almost a perfect square if you count in the bottom little black bar. So that means I can come back to my drawing, and I know that this is a square, so the length of this line should be about the same as the height of this line. So it's about there. Let's double check the top angle of the box. Hold my pencil at the top of the angle of the box, back to the drawing, put it where I marked the height. There's my line, connect the two lines, and now you have the angle of the top of that box. Let's do the same thing with the back of the box. Back to the still life, back to the angle of the box. It sits like this. It's hard to see, but we can get that corner. Back up here, we know the edge now. It goes this way, so now we can make a mark and connect. So now we have the edge, the top edge, just under this line we made. We have this edge, we have this edge, and we can look at it. And what we know about perspective is everything should taper backwards to the vanishing point, which means the front of the box should be bigger than the back of the box, right? And that's what we see here. We can see that the back of the box is tapering away and the front of the box is coming towards us, right? So now we have this box in good perspective, and we have it. So now let's look at a couple other objects and see how we can do this. So we're gonna come up. I'm gonna use my pencil, same outstretched arm, same thing. I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna get the angle of that cylinder. The bottom of the angle of that cylinder is like this. And if I look at that box, It's just past the front, just past it a little. So again, let's get our angle. There's our angle. Okay, let's transfer that to the box. And we know it's just past the box. So there's the angle from there to there. So there is the angle of that cylinder. It's somewhere in there. We don't know for sure, but it's somewhere in there. Now we can come back to the box and say, okay, well, the edge of the box, or the cylinder, the end of it, right here, it's right above the edge of the box itself. So we know it's gonna come out about the length of this box. So here's the angle, we marked it, it touches the box, the end comes almost to the end of the box. We can make our little ellipse here. We can come back over to our still life. We can measure the top of the angle of the cylinder. This, again, back over to our drawing. We know the angle is like this, so I can put it at the top of my cylinder, and I know it's gonna go to about there. So I can come and make this line down. I can also take the angle of the front of the cylinder, which is like this, and I can come back and fix my ellipse. Now I know my ellipse has to be at this angle, so now I can fix the ellipse. First, you just kind of rough stuff in. All right, now let's go back and do something else. So let's do this cylinder here. So I'll put my, actually let's do this box since we need the box for the cylinder. So I'll put my pencil again at the angle of the box. I can say, okay, this box is, let's take the width of this box, it's this long. So that means there's 1, 2, 3 boxes over. So let's go back to the drawing and I can say that's the width. So I'd say 1, 2, 3, it's off the page. So it's in here somewhere. The bottom of this box is, if I ran it all the way over, it should hit the corner of that box, and there's my angle too. So that's nice and convenient. So I can come over and I can say, there's my angle, and it should go to about here. So vertical lines are vertical, so we can put it in vertical. We know this is the angle of that, and it should end up at this corner, and it does. If we look back at this still life, this is longer than it is tall. Now I'm running out of paper, but it's just a demo, so you'll understand. I'm gonna run it off. It's longer than it is tall, so let's just say here, but actually it's not guess. Let's go back up to our still life. Let's measure the box. Where does it go across? It should hit just below the corner of the back of this box. So just below the corner of this box, it should be at the same angle. So just at the corner, comes down. There's the bottom of that box, right? We can come back up. We can get the angle of this box back here. We can come back to our drawing. And now we know the angle of this box also goes back. Now let's get the angle of the cylinder. So I come out here, I get the angle of the cylinder, I come back, I hold it, I don't move it, I drop it, here's the angle of my cylinder. So that means it's gotta come down this way. Back up, look at the top, it crosses the bottom of the other cylinder and cuts it off. So we know that, comes up, cuts it off. We don't know exactly. Now look how skinny that is. It's too skinny. So we need to measure with our sighting. This box is this thick, which is about the same as the one behind it. So that means I can go like this and say it's gotta be that big. So there it is. Where's the cylinder hit this box? If I look at the box, it's way far to the back. So that means it's, let's just call it here. So that means I've got to move these lines up. The angle doesn't change, but the position on the box changes. So there's that line. it's got to be the same width. So up this high, and measure the angle again, just to double check. There, bring it back up. There's my angle. There's my cylinder. Let's check the angle of the bottom of the cylinder. It's like this. Back to the box. It's like this somewhere, right? Now, if we look at the still life, we can see the bottom edge of the box almost hits the bottom edge of this cylinder, and this bottom edge is just to the edge of the white box. So that means the bottom of this has to hit the cylinder, the bottom of the cylinder. So I have to change this line. And this has to touch just under or just at the bottom of this cylinder. So that means it's there. So same angles, don't move those, bring it down. Round objects are round. Ellipse at the top. And now we have this cylinder, and this cylinder's angle, and this cylinder's angle, and this cylinder's angle, and this box, and this box, all in good perspective, all in good relationship to one another, and we did it without having to use any of our ruler or our perspective rules. So this is just a quick way to put objects down, to make sure the size of the objects are all correct to one another, to make sure the spacing of the objects are all correct to one another, and most importantly, to make sure the angles of everything are all correct to each other. And that's really difficult to do with a ruler and a horizon line. This would have its own 2-point perspective that would go way back here. This would have its own 2-point perspective that would end up way back here. This would have its own 2-point perspective, which would end up way back here. And you can see this would have its own 2-point perspective, which would end up here, and so on and so forth. So you can see you start to have too many perspectival lines to try to do mathematically unless you've got a whole year to get it done, right? So we just want to make sure we have good solid relationships that match what we see on our still life, and that we can measure one thing to another thing as far as how big it is, how wide it is, and really most importantly, what are the angles that they're at, so that we can again transfer those angles up to our drawing and know that what we're drawing is the same as what we're seeing. And that's how you use your pencil to cite. All right, now the next lesson is going to be all of your perspective with a ruler and with vanishing points, so you'll see how to do this perfectly. But let's just go quickly looking at this. Once I get something I like, you see it's all messy. So then if you wanted at that at that time, you could come in, if you're one of those really anal people who love perfect lines, you could come in and you could fix all of your perspective lines from the corners and the angles, and you can really sharpen up your drawing. I just freehand them in. I like a little bit of freehanding in anyway. I think it makes the drawing look a little nicer, but you can come in and really strengthen all of these angles together, and you could understand this still life, and you can make all these little adjustments with your line work once it gets up there and you understand the angles, and you can sharpen up your drawing, and then all the little lines of negotiation that you've made for measuring you can erase out, and you'd have a really good still life and perfect relationship, and most importantly, perfect angle. Okay, so that's how you use your pencil. One more time, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Use your pencil, make sure your arm is outstretched at the same distance every time. You can see my arm, it's locked at the elbow. I never move my feet. I'm always in the same spot. My arm can't get any longer than this, and I make sure that I'm always at this angle, or pardon me, this outstretchedness of my arm. I use my thumb and the end of the pencil to make measurements as far as how thick or how wide something is, or how far apart something is. So you take something that's easy to measure, that box is that big. And then you say, oh, okay, that's wider, it's about 1, 2.5 boxes to the next corner. So you can start to measure everything against each other using this, and then also the angles like this. You can get the angle of the whole object just by going down the middle, or you could get the angle of each side by hitting the sides and the bottom and the top. And if you wanted to try to figure out how to draw this ellipse in perspective, it would be very difficult. But this comes in and makes it really easy. That's the angle, it can come back. I know that's the angle of my ellipse. And then I just have to draw my ellipse inside that angle, right? So that's how you do it. That's how you sight with your pencil and get your objects, pardon me, down on your paper without having to use a vanishing point, horizon line, and a ruler. All right, now learn how to use it with a ruler. Okay, good luck. See you on the next demo.